We have another unearthed recording from a few decades ago of President Trump calling reporters and bragging about himself while pretending to be somebody else. So this is wild. Take a look.
Former Forbes reporter says Donald Trump lied to him about his wealth to get onto the Forbes 400 list. But this is really a story about how Trump did this. And we hear the proof in a new audio released by the Washington Post. It is the first known publicly available sound of Mr. Trump posing as his Vice President of Finance, John Barron. The audio is from 1984, and the journalist is named Jonathan Greenberg. He says Barron tricked him. Take a listen and see if you can tell who it is.
Most of the assets have been consolidated to Mr. Trump, because you have down Fred Trump. And I'd like to talk to you off the record if I can, just to make your thing easier.
Okay, sure.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, but I think you can really use Donald Trump now, and you can just consolidate. I think last year somebody showed me the article, and I think you had 200 and 200. And really, it's been pretty well consolidated now for the most part. As I also think somebody had mentioned that you had asked about that, or somebody had, and it's been pretty well consolidated. Okay?
Jonathan Greenberg joins us now. Thank you very much for joining us and for taking the time to dig back into the annals of memories/painful memories, and to remember that you might have had tapes of these conversations. People will hear them and say, how could you not know that was Donald Trump? But this was in the 80s, before all the TV, before he was such a nationally, even internationally recognized person. We weren't used to hearing him the way we are today. What made you look back at this?
Well, I had heard him, Chris, because I had interviewed him before he called as John Barron the year before, and yet no one could imagine the unimaginable. No one could imagine that someone would do something like this, call as their own PR person. I heard about Trump, and I looked into my files, and I guess I am something of a pack rat, and I thought I'd like to see those tapes about, the Forbes 400 and the rich list, and I looked, and I was like, wait a minute, this is John Barron. And when I heard them, I thought, these things were much better crafted lies than I thought, and that led me to further research about how much was he really worth in 82, 83, and 84. And it was under $5 million. I put him down for $100 million. He should never have been there in the first place.
You got duped. What made him successful at doing this, in your opinion?
He is a consummate con man. He understood what I was doing, going around the country, putting people on, asking them, and he figured out what he had to do in order to deceive me and get onto that list. And he did it very well. And he maintained that persona of just sort of talking about his assets without any sense of debt and lying about it. He had Roy Cohn call me to lobby for him about his net worth and lie for him. Where is my Roy Cohn? He was there back then, and he was calling Forbes magazine and talking about fictitious income statements. So he knew where we couldn't go, and he went right there and deceived me.
So you have the so what value of this. People have heard this. They haven't heard the tapes the way they will now because of what you've discovered in your own memory bank. But why should people care about what Donald Trump did to try to reestablish his financial prowess all the way back in the 80s?
Well, it shows what he did to the media or as a journalist during his career. He also did to the banks. He basically lied and deceived in order to get his net worth up so he could borrow money, which of course led to the first bankruptcy and the collapse, $3.5 billion, that he borrowed and then collapsed. And he also has done as president. He has, in a way that, just like we weren't prepared for him as the media, I don't think the media was prepared for him as a politician. Like we weren't prepared for him as a businessman. No one is prepared for the level at which of his deception. I used to be proud, Chris, that I was the guy who kept him in check. He said he was worth $500 million. He was only worth $100 million. In fact, he moved the guideposts. He knows how to change the question. Not whether he should be on the Forbes 400, but where he should go, and stopping him from his claims that he's at the very top, worth more than any other real estate tycoon in New York City.
Here's why this is important. He's actually a marketing genius. it's true that he's a con man and he's a pathological liar. That's the other big part of this, is that he lies for no reason. He lies for no reason. Self-aggrandizement reasons, and that's it. That's all that matters to him. But he's a brilliant marketer because, like he laid out there, he's able to move the goalposts and change the debate. So he tells lies that are so insanely egregious that your reaction isn't total rejection of it, which is the proper reaction, but your reaction is, well, that's so out there that even if he's half right, wow. So I'll give you another example of this. Republicans like to say that Obamacare had death panels. Now, if you're well-read, you look at that and you go, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen, and you're totally skeptical, and that idea is just fundamentally untrue, and you believe it to be untrue. But that wasn't the reaction the public had, because so many Republicans kept repeating that talking point over and over and over and over and over that they moved the goalpost. And so either people started believing the Obamacare has death panels lie, or the reaction from people was, well, Obamacare might not have death panels, but everybody seems really, really convinced that it's a terrible law, so now I don't like it. And it got to the point where Obamacare became unpopular. But when you ask people about the Affordable Care Act, that was way more popular. So that's a testament to how effective propaganda is and how effective persistent lying is. That's what Donald Trump's whole persona is built on. So, like he said, hey, he kept telling me he's worth $500 million, $500 million, $500 million. I thought I was the truth teller and the debunker who said, nope, you're only worth $100 million. It turns out he was worth like $5 million. So that's his brilliance. Lie, be so brazen and over the top and egregious that you move the goalposts and change the conversation completely. And he managed in his career to equate the name Trump with the concept of successful, even though he went bankrupt, even though his companies went bankrupt 6 times. And his dodge, when somebody points that out, is, I never went bankrupt. Technically, that's true. He never personally went bankrupt. But his businesses went bankrupt over 6 times, and he took insane loans that he had no business taking. He got a 14% interest rate on his 3rd casino and then went belly up in like under a year. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. It's all bluster. It's all bravado. It's all built on his ego. And he didn't just do this with money. He also did this with tabloids, with entertainment. He would call all the tabloids pretending to be his own publicist. It was obviously him calling. You could tell by the sound of his voice, just like you could hear. And he would say, all the women want Mr. Trump. It's unbelievable. Madonna called looking for him. And it would work. It would get him on the fucking tabloids. So he elbowed his way into the room. He's a clear con man, but he's so bold with his lies and repeats it so often that people go, even if he's half right, I guess he's a pretty big deal, huh? Therein lies the secret of how Donald Trump became Donald Trump.